Ulonka tabati yada to ye kuma daifa. Ino to ye ko je love bipa. Oba tala, oba takutakun. Zongo eshu, ogun oya osun. Kini sheshe, tan she nile yo. O jelo jara.
Alafia, peace and power, family. Welcome to another episode of African Spirituality Experience. I am your host, Orisha Bami, and we are back for another Saturday Live with another one of the guests with the tribe, man. Shout out to everybody who made it to the two shows we had last night, back to back. And then shout out to everybody, all the new subscribers, all the new channel members, all the new Patreon members. Shout out to everybody who's been showing love in the comments, showing love in the emails, the DMs, all that good stuff, family. I definitely appreciate every single one of y'all. And I definitely look forward to bringing more heat, man, for us to make it do what it do and make it be what it be. And with that, we're going to bring and welcome back the brother Bdell 1014 in the building. These Ase Screech ready to set the record straight. Brother Bdell, what's good with you, family?
Peace, brother. How you doing? Salute to everybody in the chat. Salute to your channel. And thanks for having me back on.
Yes, sir. Likewise, man. Likewise. We appreciate you. And my apologies, tribe, for the delay. I was chopping it up with Professor Kaba backstage, trying to line up the next time he's coming through. So we just set that up. So I'll be sharing that on the channel expeditiously, to promote and y'all get y'all ready to come back for the one we're going to have with the master teacher, which is going to be a dope one. And it's definitely really needed right now in these days and times in regards to the conversation we're going to have when we get him back on here. So without further ado, man, Brother Bdell, before we get into tonight's topic, decoding the crooks of Revelation. Shout out to Jimmy Lott said that title. I just be going with spirit when it comes to them titles. But I felt like I knew we was going to get into like the book of Revelations, the seven thunders, the seven, all these different, the trumpets blowing, all these different things that relate to what's happening in the world right now. So with that, you just had a show this week that I tapped into that really I felt like was kind of like a preliminary to where we're going to go tonight. You did your thing with, about the grid going black, as well as a bunch of other things. When it comes to that information, and there's been a lot that's taken place since you released that one, where do you see as far as like a summary or overview where you can kind of give the tribe to kind of just give them a sports center highlight off of what you shared with your tribe on, I think Wednesday or Thursday when you dropped that one?
Well, I basically demonstrated on how when the grid goes down, it can create a manipulation in the neural network of humans. Because, the great majority of these genetically modified foods in itself has nanotechnology. It has psychotronic microscopic cryogenic nanotechnology, which manipulates the two frontal lobes of the brain. So that can basically put you in a state of zombification and throw off your frequency to where you're not in the bandwidth and harmonize with, the ecological systems of nature and harmonize with the Schumann resonance, frequencies. So, that's the main aspect of it, because like I said, God is the highest extension of the mind, which uses elements of matter to express itself. So what they want to do, they want to attack God. This is why they want to push Neuralink. They're starting to roll it out in real time. They just had a hearing with the World Economic Forum talking about biometric technology interfacing with humans. So it's one of those things where, like I said, this is basically the epitome of the book that was written by George Orwell, 1984, which is also connected to the movie 1984. So like I said, think for yourself while it's still legal to. So you got to think for yourself, so that means that you have the ability to write for yourself. So if you don't have those two, elements, which is catered to your authenticity, this is where they're going to put a system in play, which is artificial intelligence, to replace you. So, especially during this time period, like I said, the epitome of the grid going down is the precursor to the next technocratic system that they're going to implement, for the agenda for 2030 when you're talking about the sustainable development goals.
Yeah, that's deep. And then as far as where we're going with the like the state of where they are as far as the war, the Strait of Hormuz, like all these different things that play a major role, where do you see the economic situation going and pretty much unraveling to? Because right now, the way I've been seeing and the research I've been doing, there's no way out. There's no way out for America to leave this situation unless they decide to stand up to Israel and to pretty much let Netanyahu and the rest of them clowns know that they don't want to deal with it, which I don't see that happening because they already got ET in his pocket. They already got him in their pockets. It's like, so they got him pretty much, they got him wrapped up. So, hog tied in the back of the car. So it's like,
that's why I always said You know,
Yeah.
that's what I always said, that, you know, it's an oxymoron and it's a smokescreen for Donald Trump to say, "Oh, I'm draining the swamp." You
Right.
in bed with the swamp, because remember, he went over to Israel and he put his hand on that wall and he had the headdress of a
Yep.
Jew.
Yep.
And
I saw
then
that.
Bibi Netanyahu, he accidentally said on national television, he said, "Oh, this is the first Jewish president."
Wow.
Speaking
Yeah.
of Donald Trump, so
Yeah.
like I said, Donald Trump is a double agent. He's Agent 47, which is acclimated to the hitman squad to overthrow the demonic forces of democratic culture. That's what he's
Mm.
being used for, to implement a new system, because they want the new republic to be facilitated by a technocracy.
Mm.
That's what they want, because
Mm.
technocracy in itself is interconnected to the cloud, and the cloud has to extract the neurons from the body, and they upload it to a neuromorphic cyber cloud that is connected to the archonic forces. So this is why
Mm.
when you get into the Gnostic texts and stuff, um, they speak about how the archonic forces, they don't have the ability to create. They can only extract the intelligence and extract human emotion from humans,
Mm.
right? So that's why they don't have the ability to create, because they don't have human emotion. Because that emotion in itself is what creates the navigation system for manifestation. So they have to, you know, vibrate on the energy of humans. They have to thrive off our vitality. So that's
Right.
why the most intrinsic resource in the simulation within, you know, the firmament on planet Earth, the most intrinsic resource is data,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the
That's right.
data is interconnected to your epigenetics, which is also acclimated to your genetic codes.
Mm.
So your DNA is basically personification of data.
Right. Yeah, and it looked like, of course, they're having a war within the war, you know, especially here in the Western cultural civilization. But did you see the reports where I think it was Bernie Sanders that said, I guess he had like proposed a bill to pretty much halt or to try to slow down or stop or vacate all these different data centers that they're trying to build around the country? Did you see anything about that?
Yeah, I heard about they setting up shop. They
Yeah.
setting up.
Yeah,
They setting
I
up.
know they trying to migrate from California. They're trying to bring. I know they're trying to bring some to Texas. They're trying to bring them to Florida. They're trying to bring them. I want to say like either Virginia or Delaware or both. So it's a lot of different places where they're trying to do that. And then I also been hearing, you know, murmurs or chatter about possibly being bombed. You know, where they're trying to have these sites, where they're trying to create these data centers and all that. About Iran or
Mhm.
sleeper spy agents also trying to maybe plot on bombing some of those too. Have you done any research or got anything on that?
Yeah, because that's basically the embodiment of Leviathan when you get into the economics of the geopolitical shift. And what I
Mm.
mean by that is that maritime law is gaining jurisdiction through the Uniform Commercial Code, to where
Mm.
it transmutes the equity side of, you know, the Federal Reserve System to a digital prison, perhaps.
Mm.
So it's going to transmute the old system into a digital prison. That's what's
Right.
going on. So
Right.
this is why they going after, they have to destroy the land, which is the
Mm.
embodiment of a five-pointed star. No, it's
Mm.
embodiment of a six-pointed star. So that's why it's, as far as like the maritime law transmutation process, we're going back to the law of the land. This is why they're attacking the land so much. That's what the invasion is all about.
Right.
That's why you
Yeah.
see more sheriffs than police now,
Mm.
because the
Yeah. And there's a
corporation
big.
is phased out. Because the corporation, as far as like police officers, that's acclimated to the Piscean age of darkness. That's all connected to the Vatican. All police officers work for the Vatican.
Mm.
So that system is falling. So now they got to go back to the land of the bays, which is the sheriffs or the sheriffs, the law of the land, which
Hmm.
is common law, which is military law. This is why they're going to try to lock down the planet, as far as with another so-called scamdemic, but it's going to be an energy crisis, is according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, and which is going to be the precursor to, you know, the energetic grid system going down. So this is why it's also imperative to understand, you know, you got places in your neighborhood like post offices and their vehicles or whatever, they're basically EMP proof, because those are fallout shelters. And they also show that in the movie Paradise. So you got to watch the movie Paradise, because they give you a lot of the truth in that series when the grid goes down. So you can
Right.
you can fire up a tractor it'll work. All vehicles, made, before 1980, can pretty much, sustain during the time of an EMP crisis. Yeah.
Wow. So, and I don't know if you remember if it was happening where you at, but I'm pretty sure it probably was. But do you remember when they were shutting down all those Walmarts too? Like before the so-called Blam Plamdemic that happened in 2020? So I heard that they was trying to do that with them as well.
Yeah, they're doing, with the post offices.
Yeah. Like having them be fallout centers.
Those are fallout shelters.
Right.
Yeah, anytime you see a caution symbol, like the caution symbol that has like the 3 sigils on there, those are they have wherever you see that in the building, there's a fallout shelter that leads to an interstellar, tunnel system.
Yeah, that's crazy. So shout out to Aeneas.Brown9 says, so does Trump do any work for the tribes that will let the masses know they're going to give the landmass of their countries back to us since we basically govern the land? That's a great question.
Well, think about that? Considering the fact that he has continuity of government, so that means that he can activate martial law at any time because he's in control of the military through, qualified immunity. You know what I'm saying? So that's why he's able to do what he's able to do on the land, because he's giving, the false construct of a synthetic golden age with a new republic. That's all it is. But the new republic is synthetic. It's a synthetic golden age. Smart city grid system. That's what it's all about. That's why, Israel and, the United States government, they have to work in synergy like Shaq and Kobe. You know what I'm saying? They got to piggyback off each other because the most authentic people in America are the indigenous people, so you have to feed off that vibration. This is why they want to build the smart cities here so much, because that grid feeds off the vibration of authenticity, where the chosen ones are in America, which is Egypt, which is also Atlantis. Because like I remember we was talking about on the phone, authenticity is the highest vibration on the, on the planet. And it's one of those things that cannot be duplicated. And where is your no shade to every the higher figures in in history that we had in Africa, but most Africans, they want to be like Americans.
Yeah.
That's kind of like one of those things where that's how that the true authentic energy is in this geographical landmass for a reason. And that's why they wanted to build a grid system, and the grid system feeds off the vibration, and they upload it to a neuromorphic cyber cloud. And then that's when they connected to the archonic forces to feed off that vibration.
Yeah. And it's funny because we did speak about that off air, but and just in hindsight, hearing you say it again, it ain't even just Africa. Everybody around the world want to be like us. You know what I'm saying? Like, whether it don't matter if they're African, they're European, or of any type of other descent, like we are, humbly speaking, the influencers and the leader of the new school. You know what I'm saying? Like, it have been since, you know what I mean? Since back long days ago. So it's like, that's a real thing that, everybody knows it. And being over there when I experienced it, definitely, I saw, you know what I'm saying, the difference in how you have a culture, you have a culture that has a lot of powerful, I feel like, sacred, value to it. But you see this culture, which they see over here, and it's like, man, hell with what I got here. I want to tap into what you know what I'm saying, what's over here. And I'm seeing them like, I'm loving the way that they still have the connection to their, indigenous culture, but, heritage and spiritual traditions and practices, et cetera, but at the same time, I got an eyebrow raised. I said, damn, if I had all that connectivity to my indigenous culture the way y'all do, I wouldn't give a damn about what's happening in America. You know what I'm saying? But it's a totally different mindset, because they have been colonized in a lot of ways too, to whereas I had no idea Christianity and Islam was as popular, or, you know what I'm saying, and so much of of a position of power over there. I had no clue until I actually saw it for myself. I'm like, yo, this shit is crazy. So that's very powerful in regards to
there's a lot of there's a lot of Africans that that move over here, abroad, and studying and going to school. A lot of them are Christians. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, and they have a veneration, for a culture that basically subjugated their demographic and colonized that geographical area where they basically reside. So that's how there's a conflict of interest in energies when you're talking about the American indigenous people, the autochthonous people, versus a lot of the Africans that come from different areas, even Haitians as well. Some of them, a lot of them, you know, are Christian.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what's amazing to me though is, and I know this firsthand from one of my elders, and I know that, you know, she's over 50 plus years in the tradition. So it's like, what's amazing to me is that, yeah, they'll be Christians, they'll go to Islam, they'll do all that, but at the end of the day, when shit really go, you know, run them up, they coming back to the tradition, you know what I'm saying, to get consultations and to tap into, you know what I'm saying, to go at combat whatever is really happening. So my thing is, if Jesus is doing that much, you wouldn't have to go back to, you know what I'm saying, the other, you know what I'm saying, traditions to get the real help that you need. So it really is crazy. I feel like the way it's been inverted and flipped on both sides, on both continents, you know what I'm saying, to kind of crisscross and kamikaze us, you know, against ourselves. Let me ask you this. Something that I don't know if I asked you about it, but it's something that came up throughout the week. When it comes to Indigenous Americans, people who were born and raised here, melanated beings that, you know, are of the United States, born and raised, and probably for several generations, why is it a big disconnect for so many of us to have access to our information, to learn more about the indigenous cultures, about the tribes, about the chiefs, about the land, you know what I'm saying, all these different things? Because I do see where it's a conflict of interest, because you got a lot of people who have a lot of access to all this information, but then I see where it could sometimes be kind of a conflict, because then it's like there's an arrogance in a lot of different faiths and a lot of different traditions about mine is better than yours, you know what I'm saying, And I see that within us too when it comes to the America versus Africa thing. So what is your perspective on why there's a block on information for us born here in America to have access to that information? And then why is it a rift between the two, those who believe in the African traditional cultures and those who are, you know, from the American traditional cultures?
Well, a lot of times it's dealing with the emotional energy, because a lot of people, it's kind of like the same concept of a Christian, a little girl, she grew up in a, a Baptist home, and she's going to have a veneration for what she grew up into. So it's going to be, hard to disconnect her from an emotional standpoint. So the same thing translates when you're talking about, people who believe in the out of Africa theory, and that, all the Black Americans came from Africa. A lot of those ideologies was created, in the 30s all the way up into the 60s and 70s. And then once, you hit the information age, this is where, people can do their own edification and independent research. So now it's one of those things where you have a disconnection, because some people are just not rocking with, that we came from Africa, because it's too much information. It's too much, new evidence. It's too much, so-called coincidences that's lining up with this whole the information age. So that's probably the main reason why you see a disconnect, because a lot of people, salute to Dr. John Henry Clark. I got a lot of his books, but as you progress in information, you come across other publications, you can basically delineate on what you believe to be is true. So that's pretty much what it is. It's kind of like the elders, they hold on to that aspect the most, but when it comes to the the new age thinkers, we kind of we know the whole planet went through a resetting aspect. When you're talking about Pangea, everything was pretty much connected together. So I just kind of look at it from a holistic standpoint, instead of we from over here, we over here. This whole planet was motherfucking Atlantis. If you want to be 100.
Yeah.
And they tell you that. They tell you that in the Oriental Freemasonry book, that the world is Atlantis.
What's the name of the book?
Apex, it's Oriental Freemasonry.
Oh, that's the title of the book?
Yes, Oriental Freemasonry. Yep.
Okay. I'm going to check that one out.
Yep. It tells you how America is Egypt, and that pretty much the whole earth is Atlantis.
Yep.
Wow.
Yes, sir. Okay. So I know, since we're speaking about Kemet and ancient Egypt and all that, I know astrologically speaking, there's a big alignment that's coming up in the next 5-6 days, something like that. So you want to kind of tap in with the star in regards to the Sphinx and the alignment with the star?
Now, the whole shifting process is connected to the precessional circle of the equinox, which is transmuted from star constellations from Alpha Draconis star constellation to the age of Aquarius, and it happens, every 26,000 years. Now, the star Regulus is going to be in alignment with the Great Sphinx of Egypt, and is going to put the planet in a tilt at 47 degrees. And that 47-degree angle is acclimated to the energy of the matriarch, which is the man, woman, and the child. And the man, woman, and child is connected to Isis, Osiris, and Aset. So also, when you get into the Easter aspect, with it being Easter. Now, when you're talking about, the resurrection of, the matriarch, or the restoration of divine feminine energy, is actually talking about the resurrection of the so-called black woman, right? Because when you break down the etymology of the word Easter, you get Ishtar. And Ishtar is a personification of Isis and Aset. And Isis is the true so-called Jesus, because the letter J wasn't invented until the 1600s. So, there's a disconnection when you get into the etymology and the grammar and things of that nature. So that's how this alignment that's going to be taking place, that happens every 26,000 years, is an energy, a new intelligence that's coming to the planet. And that's what I call the Christ energy. It's going to put your neurological functions and the biological atomic energy of humans to, be energetically balanced, because everything that was connected to the Western world, that was controlled by the Piscean age of darkness, which was controlled by the Draconian star constellation, that basically put an encryption over your manifestations. It put an encryption over to the point where you wasn't able to break those generational curses. Now we're going to a different energy, to where you're going to have instant manifestation, because your thoughts is Thoth, and Thoth is the personification of Christ, and Christ is the spirit of Melchizedek. So you're going to manifest by way of the frequency of your mind, if you're in alignment. Because like I said, your sine wave is your bandwidth, which is 7.23 centimeters. That is your bandwidth of your frequency, if you're basically in alignment. So during this time period, especially during this alignment that's going to be taking place, instead of taking your ass to church and connect with people, get your ass back in nature, and connect with the woods and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where it's going to be different intelligence on this planet. And I think people is a lot of the Albion Europeans in the mainstream media, they know that this alignment is going to bring a different intelligence to the planet.
Yeah.
A new way of thinking. A new way of thinking that that artificial intelligence wants to interface with.
Yeah.
And only the chosen ones is going to be able to galvanize the energy of what they call the frequency of the 144,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's dope, because we spoke about that last night, really on both of the two shows I had last night, but we spoke about it from more of a spiritual perspective. So I know with you, being a master researcher, when it comes to us looking at this thing that we speak about called the upgrades, like the genetic upgrades, the DNA upgrades, and all these neutrinos and all the different solar flares and the comets and things that are coming to the planet now, which is something we spoke about in depth on this show many times, the collaboration we've had. But how would you break down what we're about to see and experience in regards to coming from a metaphysical or from a scientific, perspective? How do you see us being able to tap in and take the momentum of this DNA upgrade, and the frequency upgrade and elevations that we're about to be pretty much treated with and exposed to? How do you see us maximizing this access to this new information?
Don't have an encryption over your heart, because your heart is a manifestation portal. Your heart, in fact, is a fractal interstellar vortex portal. It's kind of like the same concept. Like if I'm playing the video game, oh, I love this game. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I love money. When you start to do something that you love and it's genuine and it's connected to your authenticity and it's connected to your purpose, what happens is you lose track of time, because it's in your heart. So in order to reap the benefits of these new genetic upgrades and these new neurological upgrades, you got to be open from the heart space, because the heart is also a brain. When you get into neurocardiology, the heart is 100,000 times more highly magnetic than the brain, right? This is where you manifest from. In fact, you know what I'm saying? This is where you activate the spirit of Melchizedek. When you get into ancient Kemetic spirituality, the heart is the seat of the soul, not the pineal gland, right? So that's one. It's one of those things where you got to be open from the heart space in order to reap the benefits of manifestation as we get, through the Great Awakening period. Because the new energy in itself, that's what makes, a person a god. them having, you know, the ability to create. You create by way of your thoughts. Your thoughts leave an energetic imprint on the universe to the point where they're able to alchemize with the ether and interface and create your own reality. So you got to, like I said, everything has to be operated by mind, body, and soul, or mind, body, and spirit, which is the true Israel. So you got to be aligned to reap the benefits of these Christ energies, neutrinos that's coming to the planet, especially, you know, during the time of April 8th, no, April 5th of Easter Sunday. This happens every 26,000 years. So that means that you're basically at the close of the age. That's what that alignment, you know, basically demonstrates, because the star Regulus in itself is coming from the Leo star constellation that aligns with the Sphinx. That's a Christ energy, and the Regulus star constellation is actually the color red. That could be the red star Kachina, which is why I keep telling people all the time, the year of 2026 is the Great Purification period.
Yeah.
And the Great Purification leads up to the Abomination of Desolation, which leads up to the Great Separation in 2027. Because the Abomination of Desolation means that you have to have some type of, you know, ecological humanitarian crisis or some type of civil unrest on the planet to bring about this separation or delineation in the year of 2027. And that's when you're going to lead up to the fall of the church, the fall of the financial system. As far as like in between now, it's inevitable that the damn grid is going to go down. It's going to happen. It has to, because it's not going to be one of those things where, hey, y'all got 2 weeks to spend this paper money, because other than that, it ain't going to be no news. It ain't going to be no use. What they got to do is they got to hit that motherfucking reset button, and that's when you're going to see the end of the, you know, end of the old system, to where they implement a new system, but they're going to have a short period where they're going to live out that scenario. It's not going to last too long. And they got up until the year of 2043, because that's when the dome cracks open in the year 2043. But that's a whole different, you know, a whole different story.
Nah, I mean, but it's relevant. It's definitely relevant, because I got a few shows I'm working on bringing out next week, based upon like how serious this is when we're looking at what we're looking at right now. Because I'm not sure how many people are tapped into, you know, government and politics and law and all that, which I've never really been a fan of it or really been involved with it at all until recently, based upon just being obedient to spirit. But the research that I've been doing for the shows coming next week has been crazy, because the way I see it, we all know this is about finances. Everything, every war is about money. All of it's about money, power, and control. You know, controlling land masses, controlling resources, controlling, you know, different types of elements that, you know, the other opposing forces can take and kind of use to build up their pockets and their countries, etc. But to tear down the ones where they raping and pillaging their land from. But when it comes to this thing called the petrodollar, right, which is tied to the oil industry, which is tied to the debt that America operates with. Right now, with them being in this war with Iran, there's no way they're going to win the war, period. Because first of all, they can't even beat Iran by their damn self. Second of all, you got Russia sitting there waiting to tap in and tap that chin. And then you also got China waiting to jump in and tap that chin, because they both see the wounded getting weaker and weaker and weaker, just like hyenas in the wild, you know what I'm saying? The safari in the jungle. When they see that animal that's wounded, boy, they're gonna come in on you, boy. They're gonna tear your ass up, eating bones and everything. Like for real. But that's what I see them two as. I see them as them damn hyenas, just waiting for these motherfuckers to fall so they can jump in and just eat them up. And that's what's gonna happen. There's no way it will not happen. So if you look at where we're headed with this, the system is going to crash. It's going to be dead, period. There is no petrodollar when we come out of this thing. Where do you see the significance of them getting rid of the dollar? Because I feel like with the whole BRIC system and all these alignments that we see with these major forces, with the Chinas, the Russias, and now what's going to be Iran too, where do you see anybody having any type of relief from the control of the 1%? Because all they're going to do is come for this one united, you know what I'm saying, world order government, you know what I mean, that's going to operate on the one currency and all that. So where do you see us as a people and as a community and culture faring with this situation when it unfolds?
Well, you ever seen the movie Demolition Man?
It's been a long time. I gotta watch it again.
With
Rusty Snipes,
Sylvester
right?
Stallone and Wesley Snipes.
Yeah, so it's been a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah, so the people that was basically, you know, against the free world, they went underground, and on top they was living, you know, in harmony with artificial intelligence. Everything was biometric technology. but the people who rebelled against the system, they had to go underground. So this is actually, kind of, in alignment with the Hopi prophecy when they talking about the ant people that led the indigenous people to the caves to escape the calamity that was going to be taking place on the surface of the planet. So, that can happen in real time. It's like you're going to have a choice. Either you're going to have a choice to, abide by the, Antichrist system, or, or you're going to, connect with the ancestors, and you're going to, have your own sense of self-direction that's beyond, everything that's connected to the three-dimensional matrix. So that movie basically demonstrates it the most right there. Everybody conformed. They lived in harmony with artificial intelligence, but everybody who went against the system, they had to go underground.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out again. Just kind of get a refresher and see what because it's funny. I remember even like certain books back when I was younger. When I would read them, they didn't resonate. Kind of like one of the main ones I can remember, or two actually, was when I first read Art of War. I was probably like teens, like in high school, and it didn't resonate with me like that. But I didn't realize consciously or I guess mentally I wasn't prepared for that type of information. So going back into like my mid to late 20s rereading it, it made a lot more sense. You know what I'm saying? And then same thing with Machiavelli, the book The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. Same thing with that. That book is, it's a strategic book too, kind of like 48 Laws of Power and all that. But sometimes we're not ready for things when they come, but we're ready for them, when we're supposed to have them. So I'm gonna watch that movie and get ready for that message that's in that, because there's always something hidden inside of this thing we call Hollywood.
Another movie you should watch is Cyborg.
And I saw that too. It's just been a long time.
Yeah, Cyborg, who's got Jean-Claude Van Damme in it. Salute to my dad. He had me watching, I used to watch a whole bunch of 80s movies. You know what I'm saying? I'm a 90s baby, but I watch 70s. Because all the information is in the old movies. Because a lot of the producers during that time period, they were occultists for a lot of political figures.
Yeah.
You got to watch a lot of the old Abbott and Costello, how when they went to Egypt and they found a medallion of Gilgamesh. Not Gilgamesh, it was a different, because Gilgamesh, that's Sumerian. But they found this medallion in Egypt or whatever, and it had a lot to do with our culture over here in America. Yeah. So
let me ask you this. Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, but everything's in the movies, man. Especially the old movies, Hellraiser, movies like that. They're talking about the 72 demons of Goetia. Metatron's Cube, Saturn. All the old movies have the occult information because, like I said, most of the producers were actually occultists. Stephen King is an occultist.
Yeah. Especially these big franchises like the X-Men's, the Marvel, all these, like, they definitely, Star Wars, you know what I'm saying? Like, all of them was tapped in to all our occult information. That's how they were able to put these movies together, because all of it's based off of us. X-Men is based off of melanated people. So it's, you know what I'm saying, Marvel, it's all of them, Star Wars, all that's us. They talking about us and giving us our story and making it his story. You know what I'm saying? Like, just literally transmuting it, what's ours into them putting it out to make it seem as it's theirs.
That's a fact.
This is a good question right here.
Thanos is actually the personification of Theos, who is El Elyon. And that's when you get into the transliteration of the book of Revelation, because Thanos, he was a representation of Anu. Because he was the one that caused the reset when everything was in alignment, when he had the Infinity Gauntlet. The Infinity Gauntlet was the alignment of the great conjunction that basically interfaces with humans on planet Earth. And when he got the Infinity Gauntlet, he hit that snap, and that's when everything went through a cosmic reset, where you had the old world died. And, you know what I'm saying? And that's where he was at. He was in a state of paradise. That is the personification of a new heaven and a new earth.
Wow. When you said that, it reminded me of the Philadelphia Project. You remember the story of the Philadelphia Project when they tried to time travel and they messed around? They did something, but they opened up that portal where those people got lost in time. The ones who were working on the ship when they did that experiment. Are you familiar with that project?
In fact, that happened in 1943. The Philadelphia experiment. In 1943, that's when they opened up the portal, and that is why Dr. Malakazi York, he talks about the open vortex that opens up every 10-year increments from 1943, 53, 63, 73, and then 2043, that's when the firmament cracks open, because that is 13 years from 2030 to 2043. That's 13 years apart, and that is the completion of the restoration of the matriarch. That is the completion of it right there. That's the completion code.
Yeah. And that's what opened up a lot of the terrestrials that we have coming in and out of the planet as well, because when they did that, they kind of sped up the timeline of when these different people or different beings and species and entities would be coming to the planet, you know, when they opened up that portal for them to come through. So that was deep. I can't remember which book I read it out of his, but it might have been one of the Book of Revelations. I can't remember, but I know I read it in a few of his different works. But Anais Brown says, good question. Please tell us how the World Cup being here in 2026, 2027 is in alignment with all these different types of events. I can see it as a callback to Atlantis. That's a damn good question. Appreciate you, family.
There's an alignment, because when you go to the Economist magazine that came out in the beginning of this year, it shows you a soccer ball game happening with a balloon attached to it. And as I demonstrated before in my last video, symbolism is going to be their downfall. And red balloons is the personification of a clock with no numbers. So that represents detonation. It represents invasion. So with the World Cup being in Atlanta and in other places in America, that can be, the precursor to the invasion right there, to where they have some type of, because during that time, America want to get all patriotic and things of that nature. So if you have an invasion during the games, that makes, a lot more sense than anything, especially if you try to blow up a stadium. Because whatever's supposed to happen is supposed to be worse than 9/11.
And I was just about to say, because that goes back to the 9/11 event that you've been speaking about, and several others been speaking about for a minute now. So I know you mentioned that World Bank up in Cali, and then I know there was a list that came out about all the so-called projected spaces, or the places that they're threatening to kind of awaken or to I guess activate these sleeper cells. Where else would you see of being specific targets of interest for them to want to do something like another mass 9/11 event?
Doing it in Washington, D.C. on the 250th anniversary of the Independence Day on July the 4th. I can see something happening on that day, because I went to the Department of Homeland Security's website. I went to their website and I was looking up, doing a lot of research, talking about EMPs, see if they did any updates on everything. And at the top, it shows you a countdown. So you got about 102 days until July the 4th, where they're going to have the 250th anniversary. So I could see, but it's inevitable it's going to happen. What I'm saying? Even it's connected to Albert Pike when you read the book Morals and Dogma, when he said that the Islamic State is going to go against the Zionist countries, which is America. So it's inevitable it's going to happen. It's in their playbook, Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39. Persia of antiquity is going to attack Israel, right?
Which is Iran, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Persia, Iran, basically attacking Babylon, which is America. That's what's happening.
I was just gonna say, it's funny because somebody got that in the comments. Yeah, somebody got it in the comments right now. The Hopi prophecy happening in real time. A lot of prophecies are happening in real time, though. The Hopi prophecies, a lot of them. The Red Star Kachina, Blue Star Kachina, the Hopi prophecies. Like, it's a lot of them. It's almost like they all crossing the same timeline. They all converging to the same timeline.
I'm telling you right now, because like the guy said, this alignment happens every 26,000 years, and the star Regulus is a red star. It's the brightest star in the Leo star constellation. So, just from my opinion, I believe that's the Great Purification Red Star Kachina. I think that's what that represents.
Yeah, that's real deep, bro. Because if you think about it, we're not even a month away from the big red moon that we just had, the blood moon. So now you're talking about the blood moon just literally just passed. Well, that was this month, wasn't it? Like the beginning of this month. And then now you're talking about the Regulus. That's another red, solar body that's aligning with the Sphinx.
And guess what? Not let me check just in case. I don't know. I don't want to put ill harm on his name, Nipsey Hussle, but I believe he died around this time
It
because
was around.
he's also a Leo. He died on March 31st. So he's also Nipsey Hussle was also a Leo. But the Leo is actually the personification of a Christ energy. That's why the guy said there's going to be a new intelligence. It's an and that intelligence in itself is what reverses the patriarchal aspects of the illusionary energy extraction matrix. Yep.
Yeah, it's some powerful divine alignments happening, bro. Like for real, because I even remember. I don't know if I shared it on one of our shows, but I know I shared it on multiple shows. But one of my shows I did several weeks ago, I remember seeing this I told you about it. I know I told you about it. I remember seeing the volcanic eruption over in Hawaii. I want to say it happened on February 15th. But the irony of the alignment and the measurements of this thing was nuts because it was the 42nd time that it had erupted at that time frame, and then when it erupted, the lava spewed up 1,300 feet. So right there, to me, that's a double.
Dang.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so that's a double synchronicity to the mothers now. You know what I'm saying? Coming back to the womb man, the rise of the womb man, because you got the 42 laws of Ma'at, and of course you got that 13, you know what I'm saying, as the feminine, number of the feminine of the mothers, so it's a lot of powerful synchronizations and synchronicities taking place right now, whether it's in the as above, so below, from the heavens to the solar system to, you know what I mean, like the constellations.
And then with that, and then even with that, with the regular star constellation being in alignment with the Great Sphinx, that tilts the planet at a 47-degree angle, and Donald Trump is the 47th president.
Damn sure is.
And then that is a representation of the resurrection of the matriarch, man, woman, and child, the 47 prime of Euclid. Because when you look at the 47 prime of Euclid, yes, you see geometrical shapes, but it's actually talking about a hierarchy of genders, man, woman, and child. That's what it's basically demonstrating. So because that sacred geometry in itself is what manipulates the ethers.
Yes, sir. Yeah, okay. So let me ask you this, because as far as that star aligning with the Sphinx, and for those who are deep studiers and into the metaphysics and astrology and all, cosmology and all that, we know that there's a face on Mars, and the face on Mars is connected to the ancient Kemetic dynasties. So with these stars aligning to all the different or some of the major monumental monoliths over in Kemet, do we have any alignments to these same stars with all the temples and all the sacred sites and the mounds and the pyramids here in the Americas? Because I know when Doc, created his Freedom Master Teacher in Tamarie, he aligned the pyramids that he built to align with Orion's belt and to Sirius and all the stars that kind of connect with Kemet. So are there any particular mounds or sacred sites here in the Americas that correlate to that same connection to the stars in the heavens the way the ones in Kemet do?
I think some of the ones in Mesoamerica are in alignment.
Gotcha.
I think the slope pyramids, because actually slope pyramids predate step pyramids predate slope pyramids.
Yeah.
And the mounds in itself, I forgot what star constellation it was in alignment with, but there was also a meteorite that hit in that geographical landmass where you have Serpent Mound in Ohio. So I think Serpent Mound is in alignment with the Big Dipper star constellation, along with 6 other cities.
I was just about to say that's a huge mound. Doesn't it stretch across a couple different states, or is it just in Ohio? Yeah, I thought it stretched.
I think it might hit the demarcation of like Indiana a little bit, maybe. I'm not sure. Right on the demarcation between Indiana and Ohio, but I know for a fact that the meteor hit in that geographical area where you had Serpent Mound.
Wow. Yep. Yeah. That's powerful. Okay, so let's see. Let me get my notes. So I know, did we get into DT being a double agent yet? I know that was one of the things we were supposed to get into. Did we touch that topic already? With Donald Trump being a double?
We touched. We jabbed it a little bit.
Okay, so I move to the next one. So when it comes to the UN and the vote that they had, with the thing with the transatlantic slave trade being pretty much labeled as the most horrific crime against humanity of all time, you know, of our time for sure. And of course, there was some countries who voted against it, and I'll be damned if you know, it's not two of the ones that's mucking up or trying to muck up the planet now who were, you know, two that voted against it. What do you feel like the symbolism or just the outright blatant F you niggas like mentality or energy that came to, or I should say, was motivated by them voting no for it?
Because it'll be a conflict of interest on the energies. And the reason I say that is because they built their system on inversion and hedonistic activities that was basically projected to the demographic of so-called black people. So they're not going to be, you know, apologetic for it, because that's how they basically, you know, sustain themselves within this infrastructure. So, you know, and plus, you know, America is modern day Babylon. So of course, you know what I'm saying, you break down, you know, the etymological roots of the word Babylon, you get Babel, which means confusion in Greek. So their systems that was built on confusion was, you know, was the apex of their, you know, capitalism, on how they capitalized on, you know, the ecological chain, on how they capitalize on resources, how they capitalize on other demographics of people. So of course they're not going to be, you know, apologetic for it, and they're going to vote against it. So, like I said, it'd be a conflict of interest. They literally, you know, they're parasite. They're a parasitical demographic who is, you know, extracting the energy and the resources from those who actually come from this landmass.
Yes, sir. Just like fleas, roaches, and maggots. That's exactly what they are. They're parasites for sure.
And plus, you know, America is going to follow everything that, you know, Israel does by proxy.
Fact.
By proxy.
Facts. So we know that I feel like the activity in the skies has definitely increased tremendously as of all these latest developments, especially with the war and in the seas and in the waters too, right? So one of the things that I'm seeing and hearing a lot of people say, and I know I've seen and read about and studied it too, about these big Project Blue Beams or these MK Ultra, you know, PSYOP events that they're starting to try to put on. And I tap into social media time to time, and I see people posting things like angels walking in the sky, all kind of crazy shit. It looks like, yeah, I could tell that's AI, or, you know what I'm saying, the blue beam or whatever. But there's also, I feel like, crafts and you know, in the space and the skies that's coming in and out, and there's also crafts that's coming in and out of the water. You know, I feel like coming from inner Earth, whether it's your Agarthas or it's your Shambhalas or it's your, you know, all the different civilizations that's on the inner Earth. What do you feel like the odds of, if they do rapidly accelerate this thing and they start to fuck with the nukes and all that, what do you think is the outcome of what happens with the interception or the interference of extraterrestrial or superior forces getting involved with the planet? Because if they're not going to let them blow up the planet, period. I already know that. So how do you feel that would, if they were?
Well, they just came out with a domain name in the government for alien.government, alien.gov. So
I had that in my notes. I was gonna bring it up later, but let's get into it.
So what I think is going to happen, just like they did the Epstein dump, they're going to dump all the full disclosure files in that domain page. So and plus, like, you know, you read the book Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper. He talks about how, you know, he was a naval intelligence officer and he's seen spacecrafts come from the water. It's written in his testimony. And that book, you know, was re-edited like, you know, 300 times. So they took out of, you know, a lot of information. But
Behold the Pale
it's
Horse,
a real
right?
thing. Yep.
To my his book, but Behold the Pale Horse.
Yep.
Yeah, I got it somewhere. I don't know if it's in this room or not, but I definitely got it. It's a powerful piece of work. I can't remember when I bought mine. Oh, they often.
Yeah, he died 2 weeks before 9/11.
Wow.
And I know in the original publication, he talks about the coming stages of 9/11. He talks about how Robert Gallo funded, you know, HIV/AIDS, and primarily to target so-called black people. You know, gave, you know, I think it was about what, $3 million, $4 million to produce the enzymes and the biometric technology inside, you know, the stuff that they use for, you know, for pestilence and things of that nature. Yeah. Robert Gallo, it's in the book.
Yeah. And Bill Cooper, I mean, his work is powerful too. Matter of fact, there's some clips that I saw that just resurfaced back online that I hadn't seen in a while. I'm gonna start sharing some of them in like the private communities and all that, because even what's happening right now, I got a clip that I downloaded, I saved the other day. I'm talking about he's describing this verbatim. I mean, literally verbatim. Everything that's happening now in this interview, he's describing it verbatim what's happening. So he knew already, you know what I'm saying, him and several other people. And that's why he came out as a whistleblower, because he's like, man, fuck this. I'm not about to sit here and watch y'all try to literally, you know what I'm saying, destroy humanity and not do nothing about it. So he came out, you know, dropped the book and started doing the interview circuit and all that and telling the truth. And that's why they ended up offing him. So when it comes to all these things that have been prophesized or have been strategized hundreds of years ago, you know, that they've been working on this plan and this mission, we know it, and I know they know it. How do you feel like they still feel as confident as they are with producing this agenda and creating and try to play out this whole plan that they have, knowing that there are beings that are of a superior force or a superior nature that they cannot defeat and will not defeat? Where do you see the logic in that? Knowing that you're going against a force that you can't defeat, but you're still going to continue to try anyway.
So what you mean? You saying like are our military going against these higher forces?
Not just the military, but like the whole system of this, the 1%, like, you know what I'm saying, who controls this whole little matrix with an archive.
This is what's happening. See, this is the covenant. See, the elite, they have a covenant, which is a contract with higher forces. So the thing is, they got to complete.
Now, those are negative higher forces, though, right? You're talking about they have a okay.
Yeah, because what it is Satan? Satan said he's the prince of air. When you break down the etymology of the word Enlil, it means prince of air. So that means that he's the prince within this three-dimensional world, which is entrapped by the firmament. That's why, you know, Satan, he separated the intergalactic waters from the third dimension and created the firmament, which is Enlil, Yahweh, whatever the case may be. So when you talking about these entities that they made a covenant with, a covenant is a contract. So what I'm saying is that the Canaanite that controls the great majority of everything, as far as like people, places, and possessions, you know, movie industry, music industry, education system, food, they control everything. But the Canaanite, they got to create certain rituals in order to have dominance on the planet in the form of an energy exchange, sacrifice. So what happens is they got to complete certain missions to where they got to create their reset. And if they don't, so they got to have the reset before nature resets. That's the contract. That's what's taking place. That's what it seems like, because everything they do is like they're racing against nature. Why are they racing against a system that was, you know, built for them, that was created by, Yakub's, grafted devil and things of that nature. So why, you know what I'm saying? Like, why are you fighting against nature so bad? They doing it because they got shit to complete. They want to hit the reset button before Mother Nature does. And that's why, that's why everything is kind of like, is this happening from the cosmos or is the government doing it?
Right.
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. It's kind of like you got to be able to delineate, because a lot of people don't know that when you look at lightning bolts and lightning strikes, real lightning strikes come from the ground. It don't just happen in the sky. You get what I'm saying? One's coming from nature. One is basically, genetically modified weather. So the same thing takes place. They're trying to hit the reset button before the archons who control this world does this, basically does it. They even show you that in the movie Cabin in the Woods.
I don't think I've seen that one.
They didn't complete the sacrifice. The puppeteers didn't complete the sacrifice, and that's when the Nephilim, basically, the gods of the planet, basically resetted everything. That's what's happening right now.
Oh yeah, it's happening at a rapid speed. Shout out to brother Roger Williams. Ashe Hotep Ubuntu today. Yeah, I don't know if you're in Florida, brother Roger, but I know it definitely was wild here, and it's amazing because we had feeding the earth ceremony today, so I contributed mine, and I want to share it, but I gotta learn how to use this camera I got it on and transfer it to my laptop, because I gotta work on using that thing. But anywho, it was dope. But I noticed after I came back outside, matter of fact, when I had hit you up before the show, I was running a few errands real quick before it got too late, and I felt the wind. Boy, that wind was picking up something today. I'm talking about like, for real. And it's nuts because earlier when I did my offering to the earth and gave my offering and all that, like, it was just nice, calm, cool weather, nice and sunny and bright skies, everything. But when I went out to run them errands, boy, that wind was picking up. and you can feel the gust. I'm talking about I'm like, yo. And so I don't know if you hear where I'm at, brother, or in the area, but I definitely felt that wind out there shaking up something. But that's Mother Earth. She responded. You know, we was doing this all over the country today. So, you know, when we pay attention to her and give her, you know, her veneration and honor her, she gonna honor, you know, produce for us. That's how I see it.
Yep, everything is shifting. Your body is shifting too. You know, the body has to be acclimated to the energies of the planet. Otherwise, you know, Mother Nature, it will basically be able to scan your frequency and be like, this is a parasite. This needs to be discarded because this entity is not able to evolve with the ecological systems of nature and where we're going into the different dimensions and things of that nature. So that's why I said the same thing happens just like in the movie Predator. In the movie Predator, he was able to see the frequencies of people. He didn't see, oh, that person's white or black. Mother Nature sees the same thing. They see frequency. They see auric fields. So if you're a low vibrational ass person, as we step into the golden age, the precursor, you know what I'm saying, to that is death. Because, you know, because spiritual death leads to physical death, and physical death leads to mental death. So like I said, if you're not energetically aligned by way of mind, body, and spirit, you're basically no good for the next, you know, awakening stage.
Yeah, you can't enter the solid outcast. We're now entering the fifth dimension of ascension. You can't enter the fifth dimension of ascension if you're still like operating that frequency. It's not going to happen. Period. And then, that's just like, huh?
And then on top of that, that also coincides with the smorgasbord. The smorgasbord event is where you have a mass human sacrifice, where you have the Jin or the Dajjal, or which is the archonic forces, which is acclimated to the cherubim. They come from the caverns of the earth and they come to the surface and they feed on humanity. That represents the sacrifice, and they read people based on frequency. So that's why I say you got to be open from the heart space.
Yeah,
that is the green ethereal energy, which is basically the protectorate, which is your energetic morphic field. So it's one of those things where, you know, love is basically, you know, the most intrinsic energy on the planet, but the most intrinsic vibration is the authentic energy when it collaborates, you know, with that dynamic in itself. So love and authenticity is the only thing that can, you know, beat these higher forces.
Yeah. That's so real too, man. When it comes to energy, especially when it comes to connecting with nature, it's so profound the way nature responds to energy. Like I had an experience yesterday that was so dope, man. I talked about it last night, but I was out in nature for a good portion of the early part of the day, and there was so many different dynamics that came and like played a part into the experience that I had, from owls in broad daylight, like maybe 10, 11, about 10, 11 a.m. in my time frame, Eastern time frame, woodpeckers, blue jays, red cardinals, beautiful butterflies, big bright yellow butterflies, tiger print butterflies. Like it was just amazing, bro. Like all the different alignment to nature that took place while I was out there in nature. And it was just like, it's dope because the frequencies align and they mesh, you know what I'm saying? It's magnetic to one another. Just like when you don't operate on the same frequency, how they clash. You know, if you try to put two magnets together and they kind of, you know what I'm saying, they repel each other and like force each other away from each other. And then versus like the refrigerator, when you put the magnet to the refrigerator and it kind of pulls it towards it. Like that's what I feel like the light beings and the light people who operate in that higher frequency of energy, we attract to one another just like a moth to a light, right? But then when that light comes around, people who operate in that dark or that low vibrational frequency, we get to the point where we irritate and agitate them like oil and water. So it's not gonna coexist because it can't coexist because they're two polar opposites of, you know what I'm saying, the sides of polarity.
Yep. And you know, and that's why, you know, a lot of people who are NPCs, you know, you're not going to be able to vibrate, you know, because a lot of our, you know, family members, some of our kids, you never know, you know, depending, a lot of them are NPCs. They're basically computer generated spirits that was reincarnated to throw you off your purpose. A lot of people don't want to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how they get you. It's all about the emotional aspects. That's what the reincarnation trap is, the epitome of siphoning your emotional energy to the point where it disconnects you from logic. Like this is another thing that they do. Like when you so-called pass away, what they do is they use holographic technology and they might show your favorite outfits and your favorite video games and your mom and your dad. That's another way to pull you right back into the false light. And they use that emotional, spiritual energy to entrap you into the three-dimensional world for reincarnation purposes. So that's why I said, as far as that's why you got to be energetically balanced, you know, as much as possible during this time period. You know, so don't want too much emotion.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's going to cloud the logic.
Negativity, toxicity, you know, anything that's not of, like I said, constructive, like being constructive of construction of building. Like if it's taken away, if it's negative, if it's parasitical, if it's low vibrational, yeah, you got to detach from that family because it ain't gonna get to the next level. That's facts. We got a couple of questions. I know we're getting close on time. How much longer you got? You can stay before we wrap it up.
About 30.
30 more. Okay. So let me go ahead and bring a couple questions up real quick then, so we can hit a few of these before we get ready to wrap this thing up. Emperor Truth, I think I said they had a question. I don't know if you put it in there yet or not. I'll come back to the Q&A. Family, if y'all got any questions for the Q&A aspects of the show, please put them in there. I'll star them, and then I'll pull them up before we wrap it up. Shout out to Just Joy 206. Salute to Bdell, Rice Bowl, new channel here. We appreciate you joining us, family. We definitely appreciate you. And yes, indeed, you are in the right place for Saturday Night Live. Okay. So when it comes to when you said like the reincarnation thing, do you feel like they come back from the spiritual realm specifically as NPCs, or do you feel like they can be programmed with the technology and the interface? And it kind of like, and it's funny because I think when you spoke about this, but Zuckerberg lost that case, right, you know, about the child abuse and, you know, all these different things that they were doing to manipulate the children and the young people for being on social media and all that with that technology. Do you feel like this is just the beginning of that to kind of, you know, create a domino effect, or do you feel like that's something that's a one-off and they're going to try to figure out a way to kind of stop the bleeding?
Oh, it's a one-off. They're going to figure it out. They got loopholes to their system, like I said, but, you know, they don't have much time, you know, so who knows? I don't know. That's, you know, that's kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
But, you know, all their systems of control is, you know, this is what they use technology for. Is technology is being used as a mechanism to siphon the neurons from your body. And that's how they save your essence to the great majority of technology. It's kind of like when you type in a paper back in the day and you had to stick the floppy disk in. Basically, this technology is the memory card for human consciousness. They're trying to siphon that. That's what it's basically being used for. Just like the blue light when you got your phone. The blue lighting on your phone, you know, is another way to siphon the brain waves, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So everything is an energy extra. Yep.
Yeah, not just the phones, either the phones, the laptops, the computers, the tablets, all of it. Like all that's created specifically to do. And that's why I've been rocking my blue blockers. These are literally just to block that blue light, bro, because it's like I do a lot of work on the computer on my devices. And I know from the time I learned about these, when I'm consistent with it, I can feel the difference in my clarity, my focus, my energy, you know what I'm saying? All that, because I know when I don't wear them consistently, I feel, you know what I'm saying, like the bog downness or the heaviness of picking up, you know what I'm saying, and being affected by those EMF waves or frequencies that they, you know, that they transmit through these devices.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. We got some of them questions.
So but technology is nothing but a reincarnation trap. That's all it is. It's a part of it because it connects your essence to the synthetic energy grid system.
And that's all just for them to pretty much extract it. You know, use kind of like they do with the melanin and the organs for the adrenochrome and all that stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the same thing as the electrical grid. The electrical grid in itself is a net. It's called the net of Indria. It's a draconian reptilian net, and the net is the trapped spirits when they try to escape. Like, let's just say, like, hypothetically speaking, just think of somebody getting blicked up on the ground, blah, 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 blah. They got hit up, you know, drug deal gone bad, whatever. That person's soul and spirit is trying to leave this planet, and that electrical net is what you try to leave. It catches you every time. It brings you right back down. And then that's where you get disembodied, you know, spirits, and they roam the planet. And a lot of times it's either they get a new body or they take up on, you know, a different body that is vibrating on a low frequency that is conducive to their energy. So if this is like hypothetically speaking, if I was a street nigga, you know, and I want to reincarnate that energy back on the planet to where I'm trapped, I just live through the vibration of a person who's living low to get that feeling again, because that's the energy and motion. Energy and motion is connected to the spirit, which is also acclimated to the flesh.
Yeah, you about to get me to send. We about to send the tribe down a rabbit hole now, because what you saying that you triggered something in me. Because if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure you would know, but if I'm not mistaken, I think I'm not. People who transition like that, they're kind of, I guess, caught or trapped into like a state of purgatory, right? Where they're not able to ascend to the next dimensional realm, the ancestral realm, but they can't, you know, really communicate or deal with people here in the physical realm as well, right? So
Yep.
that's crazy, because there's spiritual traditions that utilizes those same energies, and they pretty much enlist them to be like rogue, you know what I'm saying, like a hitman or hit squads, you know what I mean? Like, so for example, I won't go too deep into it, but there's different spiritual practices. One of them, I believe, is called Palo Mayimbo, like Palo, and it's a tradition that, you know, works heavily with spirits, but it can be dark, because the people who work with it, for lack of better words, some people know how to invoke or to, I guess, initiate certain types of spirits that kind of are in that purgatory state, and then have them to kind of do their bidding and do their work for them as enforcers from the spiritual realm, right? So to me, that sounds exactly, or sounds similar to what you're saying, these archonic forces and these, you know what I'm saying, draconian forces, what they're doing when they're manipulating the energy that they're extracting from the people who either died or the people that they're able to control by possession, or whichever way that they gain access and control of people. Because even like parasites, for that matter, if you look at it from a cosmic level, those same forces are parasites where I feel like we're on a higher plane of existence, like the fourth dimension, right? If you look at it from an internal level here in the third dimension or in the body, that's no different than what a parasite is when it's eating us from the inside out. Like kind of like what we talked about on the last show with the like the little bug that the agents put in the Neo in the Matrix.
Yep.
So it's as above, so below, with the same parasitical type of force.
Yep. So that's why they say that there's nothing new under the sun, because motherfuckers is being reincarnated. It's not new. It's the same energies being reincarnated, because it's a program. It's a game. Just like when you die in the game, you still got to go through that same level. You got to go through the same obstacles, but it just happens during different cycles. And those are for the people who are stuck in the orbit of dysfunction. Cycles, just going through the same shit over and over. Just like a woman in a relationship. She broke up with one ex, and she jumped into a different dude who got the same energy as the last person who did her bad. Right? The same person in different bodies, because of the emotion. Now she's living through that frequencies, you know, while she's living. But like I said, a lot of times, you know, mental death leads to spiritual death or physical death eventually, because if your emotions is so out of whack to the point where you keep choosing the wrong man, and, you know, in different bodies, eventually that man, you know, love can be a demon. Love can kill you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That man might love you so much that he might whoop your ass and do all this other stuff and take your life. Because you're attracted to that energy. So that's why I said, you know, 2026 is a representation of the Great Purification, to purify the ones who's stuck in the orbit of dysfunction, and those who's basically, you know, in alignment with elevation.
Elevation, gotcha.
Elevation. So elevation in itself, it's like I said, that represents the number 10. 1 represents ascension. The 0 represents an orbit of dysfunction.
Yeah, it's the binary code.
Yep. I got a little tongue tied.
Nah, it's all good.
My
Let me see what
mouth
them
dry.
questions came in yet. Coco the boss said, "Yeah, we got to meet that BS threshold, and now we put about the ass and balls literally." Yeah, that's facts. So what do you feel about people who have done the work, that came, you know, that's present on the planet now? They've done the work, they've lived the life of Iwa Pele, balance, good character of Ma'at, et cetera, et cetera. when they transition, what dimension or what realm do you feel like those, you know what I'm saying, do you feel like they ascend to another dimension or to another access of a higher heightened level of actuality or reality from the spiritual plane or perspective?
Well, they basically become multi-dimensional and they have a choice to come to the planet. So this is why I think, from my independent research, the great majority of chosen ones, they're incarnations, not reincarnations. So it's kind of like the same concept because, like I said, the two celestial bodies of the sun and the moon, they're basically portals. The moon is a portal for reincarnation, and the sun is a portal for ascension. Now, this is just my perspective. I didn't get this out of a book. It's just common sense to me because if you have neutrinos, which are Holy Ghost particles, those basically interface with the etheric frequencies of the soul. So a lot of people who are chosen ones and they have souls, I think when they pass away, their essence gets projected to the moon and extracted right back down on the planet in the form of a solar flare or in the form of a neutrino to bring about the new upgrading or evolution of the planet, which is, spiritual metamorphosis. So that's why I said, like, nothing's new under the sun, whether you reincarnated or incarnated. Some people are here to beat the game. Some people are just here to conform. And that's the diametrical difference between a chosen one and an NPC, which I talk about in my book right here. I got a whole chapter in my book talking about NPCs versus the chosen ones.
Yeah.
Right.
And I gotta get you that address too to get my copy.
Yeah. Send me that. But and I'm actually doing a free food and book giveaway Monday. So
that's what's up.
Yep. So I'm
doing. You doing it in person or on the channel?
No, I'm doing it in person. There's a lot of I stay downtown and there's a lot of homeless people that I see at this gas station all the time. That I'm talking about be packed. So I'm gonna just, I'm gonna get a whole bunch of books, get some fruits, some vegetables, some apples, some, what I'm saying? Of course, I gotta meet them where they at because everybody don't want fucking fruits and vegetables. They want a slice of pizza if you want to be 100. So I'm gonna get them some pizza. So that's why I'm gonna do. So you gotta have the balance. So but you cannot get the food unless you get a free copy of the book. That's the thing. Because I just don't want to we're not just feeding, you're not just feeding their bellies. I also want to feed their mind. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're really about raising the evolution of the planet, you got to raise up the frequency of those who were stuck in degradation.
Facts. Yes, sir. No, that's real. That's dope. It's funny that you say that. Let me bring this question to the floor real quick because it came up. I was going to share it right before you went into that. But shout out to Coco the Boss. She said, how do you identify or how would you know that someone is an NPC?
Those who don't have the ability to create independent thoughts. They can't think for themselves. Like, hypothetically speaking, or a person, you might just say, you can show them all the proof in the world. You can be like, you like, mama, I love you and everything, but you ain't, you connected to, monotheistic religion. You're a Christian. You go to church every day, but, this ain't the right way. You know what I'm saying? That ideology came from, from white, slave masters and things of that nature. You can show her the truth. You can show her that, Christianity was created in 325 AD at the Council of Nicaea, and then how they use it with the Council of Eucharist with the Greeks. And you can show her all that evidence, and she still is going to go against that and conform to, westernized religion. That's how you know a person is an NPC. You can show them all the proof in the world, and they still be like, nope, I'm still rocking with Jesus. You can no, it don't matter how much it makes sense. They still rocking with Jesus. That's how you know you're dealing with an NPC.
But
or you can be like, mama, Christian, mama, you go to the 1724 Black Christian codes, a Black person, is, it's a degraded term. And then when you go to the G3526 Strong Concordance, Christian translates to the word Black. So that means I don't have no sovereign capacity. So why are you calling yourself a Christian, mama? That's just what I am. That's just, that's how they move. NPCs, they just, they go with comfortability. It feels good to them.
And I agree with you, but I also want to paint a picture of a different perspective because I agree with your perspective and your answer to that. But I want to pose this perspective to you because I also feel like these same people that we're speaking on, like that your response was for, I also feel like they have been attacked and have been conditioned and are living in a forced form of trauma, spiritually, mentally, psychologically, and emotionally, that they are tied to this fake ass parasitical white damn Jesus on the cross or whatever, and they don't know no different. So it's like they've been so subliminally seductive, you know what I'm saying, or seduced and raped, you know, consciously, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, that it's almost as if they don't even feel comfortable or, you know, the confidence to think of anything outside of the condition that this whole weapon of mass destruction, is what I call the Bible, was created to do. So now, do you feel like there's a variation or a window to where some people can be snapped out of that forced trauma or that forced conditioning to awaken to, you know what I'm saying, greater levels of expansion or consciousness? Or because I feel like some people are probably exactly how you said, but I also feel like it might be a potential for people to have the ability to wake up, you know, and kind of like break free of that, you know what I'm saying, ball and chain of the conditioning that this religion puts on people.
Now, this is what I call advanced NPCs, because you have different tiers of NPCs. You got your standardized ones. Your standardized NPCs, they basically, you know, they conform to anything. But the more advanced ones, they have the ability to see beyond the illusion, but they have a cap consciousness. Like they might divorce from religion and all that, but then jump in a cult or something to where they worship a person. So it's kind of like one of those things, or they have, you know, a spiritual psychosis because, you know, they're mentally fractured and spiritually broken. So a lot of times that creates toxicity, and that also creates, you know, spiritual psychosis. Like I've seen people in the spiritual community who are also, you know, could, a lot of times could be an NPC as well.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of them, you know, they're subjected to certain ideologies and stuff, but at the same time, that's not in alignment with their lifestyle. You get
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or like I said, they have a cap consciousness when it comes to certain stuff.
Yeah. I agree with that alignment to the lifestyle thing for real, because I feel like, and it's amazing to me, but I feel like people that are used to lying and used to bullshitting and capping and all that other stuff, I do feel like at some point in time they start to believe their own bullshit. I believe they start to believe their own lies and their own cap. No, seriously, I believe that they really do. I'm not sure what the condition is called, but I've heard people that I know for a fact they lying their ass off about something, but the way that they're talking about it, they standing on business. I'm serious though. I've seen this in a lot of different occasions, but they standing on business. They're not coming off of that. I'm like, you do know, I know you full of shit. I know the answers to this. I know the truth to what you're talking about. I really do know the truth. Like, but you hear them. I can't make this up. I'm so serious. Like, but so I know this is got to be a real mental health condition. I can't think of what the diagnosis of it is, but that's a real thing though, man. Where people
It could
really
be
do
a sociopath.
Sociopath, bipolarism. I don't know. There's a lot of different ones that I feel like it kind of can be tied to, but it's a real thing. I know that.
Yeah, like for like hypothetically speaking, like yeah, like so, I feel, I ain't talking down on the people who, conform to the, what Nature Boy did or whatever, but that is the demonstration of it right there, as far as like, you know, cap consciousness. Yes, they understood that religion is bad. They understood that all these other things was bad, but once they got to a certain, energy, it became capped. And when anything that has a cap consciousness, it has the ability to go through a state of inversion. And that's when everything basically went left, basically during that time period, where it wasn't about, having a veneration for nature and things of that nature. It turned into, something that was hedonistic. So that's why, a lot of times stuff like that happens. It creates spiritual psychosis. Like I said, now you ain't worshiping, religion and Jesus. Now you worshiping another man.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So, so stuff like that, that's like, you got advanced NPCs. Like I said, some of them, you got standardized ones, and then you got, advanced NPCs. You just got to be careful.
Oh yeah.
And you got a lot of them in the spiritual community, you know, just because they wear crystals and stuff, and she got the locks, and she got the belly beads on. That don't mean she the one just because, you know, she could be a whole demon. You
Say
know,
it again.
dealing with a lot of, emotional and, you know, spiritual degradation, you know, past relationships and stuff, not closing, you know, certain doors, you know, stuff like that happens. That's a part of our reality. But you know,
and I want to hit this real quick, because when we were talking about it, I didn't want to cut your wisdom on it, but when we were talking about earlier about like how, you know, men and women, I feel like, do it, but like people will get out of a relationship and then jump right back into another relationship, but then ended up pretty much being in a relationship with the same energy but in a different body. That's real. And the reason why I feel like I know that's real for a fact, not only from the people that I work with, you know, doing counseling and consultations and things of that nature, but also I could see it based upon the repetition of patterns, because as you know, a lot of us have heard, we attract what we are. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if you get out of a toxic ass relationship, or you get out of a situationship or a job or whatever the case may be, where you were exposed to extreme toxicity on a consistent basis, you can't help but to take on some of that trauma, take on some of those, whether it's emotional or verbal or physical, you know what I'm saying, abuse, whatever the case may be, you're going to be affected by that. So if you don't take the time when you finally remove yourself from that situation to heal you, to learn to love you, to, you know what I'm saying, pour into you, to value you, to elevate you, you ain't going to ever heal and elevate and rise in consciousness or in spirit to the place where another elevated frequency of energy will even be attracted to you, because you've already kind of capped your own self, staying in that same zone based upon not doing the inner work and not doing the work that it's going to take to heal and remove the layers of trauma, pain, you know what I'm saying, whatever the case may be, to elevate and rise within the spirit of self. And so that's, to me, I feel like you're going to naturally continue that vicious cycle of, you know, attracting the same energy, because you didn't do any work in between leaving this relationship going into that one.
Yep. You got to close those doors before you evolve. You got to evolve from certain situations. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, you're going to keep going through the same shit over and over and over.
The hamster wheel.
You know, yep.
Groundhog
so, that's in, internal damnation, basically.
Yeah.
And that's also, an entrapment that can be witchcraft. That's, that's a form of witchcraft as well.
Yeah.
An entrapment of energy.
Dark magic, all that, yeah. It's a real thing. Yep. All right. I know we're running close on time now. How many questions can I get? Because I got a lot of them in now. So I'm gonna get as many as you got time for.
Okay.
How much longer you got?
About 10 minutes.
10 more? Okay. So I'll get a few in, family. So shout out to Emperor Truth 777. He said, "Peace, gods. Please Google this. I know Bdell touched on sports and heavyweight fights taking place at the pyramid soon. Usyk versus Rico at the Giza at Giza, May 23rd. Can you break that down? Or if you haven't, can you check out the symbols and the images, symbolism and images?"
I actually haven't touched on this yet. It's my first time hearing about it, but I'm going to look into it. It's my first time hearing about it.
I think either him or somebody else mentioned it on, I don't know if it was with you or Rod, Big Chief, or whoever I was on with, but I think it might have been Emperor Truth. If not, somebody else had mentioned that a while back. I'm not sure if it was him or someone else, but brother, if you can bring me that one again on the next time we do a war report, by that time we'll be tapped into that one and research that one for you, brother, Emperor of Truth. And then we got let's see, what's the next one I'm gonna hit. Actually, I think I hit on. Wait, nope. Here go another one. This is Emperor Truth again. These guys, if you do Q&A, okay, no, that was the he was setting up for the one that he just asked. Okay, I got this one. So shout out to Emperor_me. Question: every time someone stares at me, I trip, I hurt my finger, or something weird. It never fails. I could just be walking. I've been walking just fine before. Is there a way to protect my auric field better? A crystal, maybe? Yeah, there's a lot you could do. You want to hit that?
Yeah, psychic self-defense. Psychic self-defense. Because psychic self-defense is interconnected to the mind, and the mind has the ability to basically command the cells in your body to create this protectorate bubble, around your frequency. So it's one of those things where you, like I said, psychic self-defense. If you, tell yourself like, hey, I don't want to trip over nothing, and somebody looks over me, you can basically regenerate that energy in your cells to the point where it can demonstrate it in real time. So psychic self-defense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real thing, family. You know, and I don't know where you're at as far as your spiritual practice, but there's also spiritual totems and items that you can get as well that can help with a lot of that. And it's a very powerful thing because I've seen and read studies and researches and even books that talk about the power of people who have a level of power with their mind. Because any one of us, for example, let's just say you was riding the bus, the city bus, and you got some people sitting behind you, and you can feel that they're looking at you or talking about you, and you're going to turn around and look back at them because you can feel it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you working with operating out of the sixth sense. You're operating, you know, with being an empath or just your intuition. You can feel that somebody's talking about you or looking at you. So you can turn around and look, and sure enough, that's what it was. So people can create a ripple effect within the wavelengths of our existence or our experience by sending negative energy. Like, that's a real thing. Some people are just so toxic and hateful and evil, they don't even know that they're doing it. And some people are that toxic, hateful, and evil, and they know specifically and precisely that they're doing it, and they actually, you know, set out to do it intentionally. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of either catch strays or catch straight up, you know, attacks from people that's operating on them type of wavelengths. Okay, I got like one or two more. Let me see. Shout out to Empress Cindy said, for people who have moved out of the U.S., are they going to be better off in Africa or other places, etc.? I guess the people like moving away from the rapture of what's coming this way.
I wouldn't say so, because they're also building smart cities in Africa as well, and I know the great majority, you know, of that geographical landmass in, you know, Africa is colonized by China. So I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, some people believe that, leaving America, you know, is going to be the personification of the Great Exodus plan. But I mean, this is your homeland, and, you know, like I said, Donald Trump, he's playing both sides. So in the New Republic, in some shape or form, you have to, you know, cut off maritime law that was interconnected to the corporation that basically siphoned the land. So the fall of the corporation is you getting the land back, right? So you just gotta, you know, there's certain things that we gotta do, you know, or it just be a waiting game, just from my perspective, because like I said, you can't you can't fight paperwork with paperwork. You know what I'm saying? To get the land back. You know what I'm saying? Reparations, you know, that in itself, yes, you know, it can help, but you would still have to conform to misnomer titles in order to reap the benefits of reparations. So it's basically like saying, yeah, I'm a black person, yeah, I'm an African American, and then you get the finances, and then that's basically connecting you to a different system, even though you got the finances. They might hit the reset button right when they give you the damn reparations. Then the money won't have no type of intrinsic value, so you never know, you know, what could happen. So as far as, like, you know, I think moving is pointless. Trying to, uh, find paperwork to get your nationality, I think that's kind of pointless. Like, we're in a stage right now where nature is doing the work. You don't need these systems to, to reap the benefits of everything that you deserve in America. You on mute.
Oh, okay, yeah, I had called. Yeah, now that's real, and it's funny because everything that you said, we've seen that happen before. We've seen it with marijuana. Marijuana been a helpful, you know what I'm saying, healing medicinal plant from times immemorial, you know what I'm saying? But until they figured out a way to weaponize it and to cash out on it, you know what I'm saying, to benefit from it financially, it was illegal. But once they figured out a way that they could utilize it as a way to still, you know, contribute to some of their control and the things that they've done to manipulate it and make money off of it, now all of a sudden it's legal. You know what I mean? So that's exactly how they like to play their little games. So I got one more I'll do real quick. Shout out to one Miss Lissa, said that I was listening to the radio today and a game sound like Mario or a game or something was playing at the same time at two different times. It sounded so weird. It kind of sounds to me kind of like, you know how when you play a record backwards, you can hear that's what it sounds like. She might have experienced something similar to that.
Like probably he was leveling up, because that's like bloom, bloom, bloom. That noise, he probably was leveling up. Like I told you, new energies is coming to the planet, so you never know. That could have been a energy exchange.
Yeah.
Because I mean, because even when you get into the metaphysics of a mushroom, some people believe that the mushroom was actually Jesus. Because a mushroom is connected to the mycelial network of nature. It's connected to everything. And remember when Mario, he ate the mushroom, he became his higher self. He got bigger. He grew up. Boom. And then he ate the star, Christ consciousness. And then that's when he's able to, you know, defeat everything around him based upon his frequency, his authentic energy. Because when he ate the star, he was able to alchemize all the color spectrums on the chakra, color spectrum, basically. So that, like I said, many different ways to look at it, you know. But
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's real, man. I've heard that several times. I haven't tapped into the shrooms and the mycelium network and all that yet. I'm interested in it. I got to do my research on it. I don't believe in just jumping into things, man. I like to research and make sure that it's for me, especially when it's talking about things to take them. But from what I hear, a lot of people have powerful experiences with it. But one thing I've heard so many times is that when people do it, they always come back saying that they did see God or was communicating with God or received downloads directly from, you know, what they felt like was God or source or, you know, the universal prime creator. So that's it seems like it's a very commonality from people who have, you know, tapped into the shrooms, where they have that experience, where they have some sort of communication or some sort of visitation or some sort of connection to, you know, receiving downloads from the creator. That's what's up. Well, I know you got to get ready to roll, bro. So before we get up out this thing, if you got anything you want to, you know, drop off to the tribe and to the family before we check out, man, it's all yours before we wrap it up.
Oh yeah, we in a time right now where an ecological humanitarian crisis can happen at any time. So, you know, as far as like trying to book vacations and go on trips, this is the time to sit down and understand like what is taking place before you even try to, you know, call yourself going on a vacation trip, because you might get stuck somewhere and you might end up in a place where there could be a psychological operation. Because the sleeper cells, like Donald Trump, he said verbatim, we know where the sleeper cells was at. He basically said that they know where they at. If you know where they at, then go get them. So if you already know where they at, that's how you know it's going to be an inside job. And you just don't want to get caught up in that just because you want to go to New York, you know, for a weekend, or Chicago, or you want to go to Houston for a weekend and have fun. Don't get caught up into the bullshit, you know what I'm saying? And you just read the room. The sleeper cells activated. I mean, they ain't activated yet, but they're going to be potentially activated. Just pay attention to everything around you.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, man. Keep your head on a swivel. Stay protected, you know, whether you got to do it spiritually, physically, weaponry, like whichever way you got to protect yourself, make sure you do it, because it's definitely the time where it's needed for sure. That's facts. Okay, well, yeah, I definitely appreciate you, good brother, and I look forward to us doing it again, man. I definitely get up with you to see how we can kind of line it up, you know, how our schedules align in divine time in the near future, man, to bring the war report back to the tribe again. But yeah, I appreciate you, Vonnie Spencer. Yeah, it's a lot going on. So it seemed like Lister wasn't the only one that experienced something similar to that. But I feel like it does play into what you're saying too. A lot of us are, you know, elementing, and we're accessing a lot of different things.
Hey, but here it could be also be a coincidence, because I'm a nerd. There's a new Mario movie about to come out too, so it could have been a commercial. So you
never know, man. Look, you never know with these people,
I'm
boy.
one of
For
these
real.
people. I'm one of these people. Like, I try to look at everything from a logical aspect of it before I be like, nah, this is spiritual. Because my girl, she thinks she makes everything so spiritual. Like the door can possibly, you know, be cracked open, and then the wind, gust of wind, blow the door open. She'd be like, oh, there's an entity in there. I'm like, girl, you left the door damn near open. That's why I did that. You know, so I'm one of those. I'm more practical. I gotta be like, okay, now this don't make no sense. I can't find nothing to make this make sense. So this is actually spiritual. So I'm more logical before I tap into that.
Yeah. No, I get it. I try to do it that way. I try to look at things from my perspective, from the other person's perspective, and then I try to step back and look at it from a neutral perspective that's like not biased to me or them. You know what I mean? Because I ain't gonna lie, that helps me out a lot though. Because being somebody, you know, people who I feel like they got some knowledge, or, you know, are well read or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes people do get the stigmatism of being a know-it-all, or feeling like they know everything and nobody else can know things. So I take pride in not being that way, because nobody knows everything. You know what I'm saying? I don't care how smart, how wise, nobody knows everything. I can learn from a baby, from a dog, from a 4-year-old. You know what I'm saying? Just as much I can learn from one of the distinguished elders. So it's like, that's where being humble, I feel like, and removing like the ego away from you know, whatever it is that you do, or, you know, how you do what you do, I feel like it gives you the opportunity to then be able to see other, you know, versions, perspectives, and, you know, ways that things can go. So I definitely get it. If you got time, I got one more I ask for you, and then from there,
Okay.
I got a couple. I'll take Tribe. Once you go, because I know you got things you got to do too. So John Ra 115 says, Bdell, you mentioned finding your purpose, but has nothing to do with being attached to the system. You mean like building community, healing others, or being a truth teller? Like, so pretty much I think he's asking, like, how would you identify a person finding their purpose?
Those three components is acclimated to a true purpose, because building a community, healing people, and being a truth teller is always going to be a lot more sustainable than, you know, once everything basically crumbles. So if the grid goes down, you're still going to have healers. You're still going to have healers who have the ability to live off the land and galvanize resources and create concoctions. And then you're going to have truth tellers. They still going to be out here. You're still going to have builders. So that's why I said, you know, everything that's beyond, you know, people, places, and possessions, that is basically, you know, a true purpose. Because, you know, a lot of us, you know what I'm saying, who's tapped into the information, if the grid goes down, you know what I'm saying, we still gonna be out here talking, you know, and speaking our truth, because we've been speaking about this, you know, whole thing since, you know, all this has been going on for many years.
Facts. That part. Yeah, that's real. You know, and shout out to bro that asked the question, because I didn't know it at the time, bro, but my journey started at like 14. You know, when I first got exposed to Dr. York's work, that's when I saw now hindsight looking back, I saw that's literally where not only the seeds were planted, but I feel like that's where the call was made for me to answer, you know what I'm saying, my purpose. And I didn't know it then. I trust and believe, you know, I didn't have a clue back then. That was 32 years ago. But now in hindsight, looking back at it, that's literally, you know, where the journey began from. Because once I opened that Pandora's box, there was no looking back. And it's funny, I use this with some of my consultation clients. I'm like, yo, once you receive a certain level of downloads or access to like spirit, like giving you confirmations and giving you visualizations, manifestations, whatever you want to call it, activations, it's like toothpaste. Once you start to, you know, you start to put that toothpaste out onto the toothbrush, it's not going back in that tube. You know what I'm saying? And it's only going to come out more and more and more and more and more. So it's like, that's how a lot of us now are awakening to where all these synchronicities, all these different experiences, these downloads. I've been seeing a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've been seeing things, I'm pretty sure they're in other dimensions, or, you know what I'm saying, like spiritual entities or whatever, but I've been catching them, you know, through the peripherals and, the, you know, in different angles of how I've been looking. So it's like, it's a real thing that a lot of people are experiencing on a lot of different ways and levels.
Facts.
That's what's up. Well, I appreciate you, bro. I'm gonna probably hang out here, hit a couple more of these questions and get out myself, but I definitely know you got a roll. So one love, man. Appreciate you coming and doing what you do, and I'm definitely have to make sure, you know, we line up doing it again, man.
I appreciate to everybody in the salute to everybody in the chat. Put the right bows in there in the transmission, and thanks for having me back on the channel. Thank you, brother.
Already, brother. Look forward to doing it again, man. You have a good one, bro.
All right, peace.
Yes, sir. Peace. All right, family. So I'm gonna hit a couple of quick questions that I saw before I jump off too, and get ready to get something to eat out in this these Ase Screets. I think it was let me see 1 second. What is it? What was it? I thought I started. It was brother Roderick. I know I saw one you had asked about. Let's see if I can find it. I thought I started so I could find it easy, but I guess I didn't. There's a lot of comments in here, so let me bear with me, family. Share me some grace, please, so I did start. It ain't showing. Okay. Brother said, honors Risha and Bdell. I'm a Christian, but I'm in my awakening of consciousness, and I see the difference between what wasn't taught and discussed or the way of living, and I now have feelings in the church. Why? Can you share with me when you say you now have feelings? Are those positive feelings? Are they like new feelings, or like frustrated, angry, you know, disgruntled type feelings? If you could share what type of feelings that you have, I think that'll help me to go deeper into where I'm gonna go with it. But I'll say this: there's a lot of people who were brought up and raised, whether they were raised Christian, they were raised, you know, Islamic, you know, Muslim. She was raised Jehovah's Witness. I think those are probably like the three main ones most people in the Americas was brought up on. And it's so many people that I know it's kind of like an exodus that are leaving the church, right? Because it's not resonating, or it's not working, or it's not, it's not having that same effect, or it's just not result oriented. You know what I mean? So it's like people are waking up and wanting to have more, to feel more, I think, to be more and to do more, right? And it's like Christianity or the churches isn't doing it anymore. But I feel like that all goes back to a lot of stuff that we were talking about earlier, especially like with the fall of the systems, the fall of religions, the fall of the financial system, the fall of all these situations and systems that are put in place for this whole patriarchal Piscean age, system. Like it's falling away. And so the significance of the hold that it had on people is not the same anymore. A lot of people are just waking up and they're not feeling a lot of things that we were indoctrinated with, right? So I feel like with you, Brother Thomas, with even you just being on this channel and being a member of this channel, like you definitely are going through a transformation and an awakening that's within. So it's just you really just connecting to your God self. You're connecting to your child of godness. Like your umbilical cord is now reconnecting with the universe, with the womb, you know what I'm saying, with that from which we came from. So it's like that's the only way I feel like we can really tap in and have these elevations and have these manifestations of rising within our consciousness, is that we have to do work within self, or self actually kind of pulls us into this phase of elevation, this phase of spiritual maturity, spiritual growth. And so it's like for so many people on the planet, it's inevitable, because Mother Earth herself is raising in the consciousness and raising in the frequency, you know what I'm saying, of the vibrations from a cosmic level down to a planetary level. So it's almost like if you have any sense of spirituality into you, regardless of what system or what tradition or religion that you come from, you're going to feel these downloads, because we're all connecting, I feel like stronger and raising higher to our connection to the Creator. And at the end of the day, no matter who your God is, or your religious is, or your religion is, or what, none of that, if you're operating from a place of integrity or Iwa Pele or Ma'at with whatever that faith system is that you believe in, I feel like that faith system and that Creator should be working for you. If you're doing whatever the principles are and you're really doing it diligently and you're really doing it for real, you should get results from it. And then some people, unfortunately, if they are and they ain't getting no results, then something's got to be wrong with what you were brought up in that system or that religion or that whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, I feel like we all have the ability to tap into that higher power and that higher self by just going within. And then by going within, we kind of get guided by ancestral, guides or ancestral forces, or it could be, the deities, it can kind of call us sometimes. And, it's a lot of different ways and a lot of different entities or energies that can kind of guide us or pull us towards a level of growth or expansion. And it's just like the snake. And then once we hit that phase, we have to shed that skin. We have to shed what no longer serves us, because it's no longer conducive to our growth. So when a snake hits a certain level, they have to shed that layer of skin that they were in prior to that level, because there's no way they're going to continue to grow further, in order for the growth process to happen. I feel like that's what's happening to a lot of people, in humanity. Let me see. Listening to the sermons and how I am to carry myself in the situations. I'm a Pisces, and I want to question and challenge the knowledge of why be in the traditional way of disbelief. Go with what feels right with you, man. Because this is what I'll say to that, is that everything that we experience here, especially in the Americas and in the Western cultural civilization, it's all been stolen. It's all stolen legacy. Every aspect of it, from the A to the Z, from the rooter to the tutor, from the alpha to the omega, it's all stolen legacy, even Christianity. So what I would say to you, brother, is if it's something that you still believe in and that you still want to practice and you still want to work with that particular system or spiritual practice, I would go back to the origins of it and start to do some research on Christianity from Ethiopia, because Christianity began in Ethiopia. So it still began on the continent, and it still began with melanated people. So those who live in Ethiopia have access to the true, original form of Christianity. And that's where it was stolen from by those, parasites that stole it from them and then brought it over here, convoluted it, watered it down, and created a weapon of mass destruction for it to operate out of a colonialized system for oppression, colonialism, and really a system of control. Like literally, that's what that was all about. That's why they stole, that, just like the swastika from the Nazis, that was ours. So it's like they bastardized and stole a lot of our legacy from, you know, from antiquity, and it's like they just use it to their ability, you know, to use it as a weapon versus using it as a tool, you know, for progression and elevation. So that's what I would say, Brother Roger, in regards to the aspects about the church thing. Just so, because there's a few things that I'm kind of still trying to figure out and decipher, so I don't want to like speak on a way that's not going to be conducive to, you know, making sense or for growth for you to make sense. So hopefully I did give you some sort of clarity in regards to the question. But yeah, I think that might be all the questions, family. So with that, I definitely give gratitude, man, for all y'all who showed up, showed love, and showed out in the comments as always. Appreciate the love, the support. Appreciate all the new, like we got some new tribe members and some new people checking out the channel. If you're new to the channel, family, please like, share, and subscribe. So we can beat this algorithm, because a lot of this content they don't want getting to the masses, and you know, we all know why. But we need to get this information to all those who have the ears to hear and the eyes to see, because united we stand, divided we fall, family. So I definitely give gratitude to all y'all for showing up and showing out for us tonight, man. Shout out to the brother Bdell. Shout out to Sekmet Ma'at, who was on here last night, burned down. Shout out to Wunam, Nikki Love, and Baba Adinkra, you know, came through and burned it down for part 2 last night, man. So I give gratitude and thanks to everybody for coming through. And yeah, we got some dope shows lining up for next week too, family. Patreon, I got some stuff coming that probably be in there in the middle of next week. I definitely got the Dr. Blair series that I'll be sharing. The rest of those parts coming up soon. And then I'm working towards our next few private community calls. So I definitely give gratitude, family. I think that's an internal conversation y'all got going on in the comments. But I definitely give gratitude, family. So I'll see y'all on the next episode. This has been another live Saturday Night Live with Brother Bdell of the War Report. I'll see y'all on the next episode, family. We out. Peace.
Ẹni tó gbàgbé ilé ṣàpò ìyàgbọ́, tẹ́ǹtì ẹni takísà ní tàtàn, ò bá padà sílé anítìjàkọ, ẹja lọ pé eégún mọ́sí ẹni gbẹ́rẹ́ ìpàkọ́. Forsake not your ancestors and pray.